We begin here. Former IFP President Mangosuthu Buthelezi has paid tribute to KwaZulu-Natal's first Premier, Frank Mdlalose, who died from COVID-19 related complications in hospital yesterday at the age of 89. Buthelezi says in a statement that Mdlalose's wife, Eunice, is also in hospital with COVID-19. Buthelezi has conveyed his condolences to the Mdlalose family, including his daughter, Makhosazana. Former IFP President Mangosuthu Buthelezi has paid tribute to the late Mdlalose.
Dr. Frank Mdlalose was born in rural Cosatu in northern KwaZulu-Natal in 1931. He studied at St. Francis High School in Meren Hill before graduating as a medical doctor from the University of Natal in 1958. He worked at King Edward Hospital for 2 years and later started a private practice. Dr. Mdlalose became involved in politics while at university between 1950 and 1953. He was an active member of the ANC Youth League. He then joined the Inkatha at its launch in 1975. Inkatha, which later became the IFP, became his political home for decades. Dr. Mdlalose held different positions in both party and the KwaZulu-Natal government. Many have credited him for his role in helping end the political violence between the IFP and the ANC. But he says not everyone recognized his contribution.
Some of them actually said so openly to me, that they thought I was selling out to the ANC. But incidentally, when we spoke with Mr. Jacob Zuma, on his side too, there were those that were saying he was selling out to the IFP.
Mdlalose says political tensions were visible even in government between the IFP and the ANC shortly after the 1994 elections. He worked closely with former President Jacob Zuma.
There was that situation which was at the beginning rather tense, but well, we had to manage it, which was understandable because we were coming out of a situation where there were, obvious quarrels and fights and bloodletting among the people of the province.
Professor Otim Nxumalo was the Provincial Director General during Mdlalose's tenure as Premier. He describes Mdlalose as a selfless and dedicated leader.
A leader is perceived as being amenable to change, to accommodating other people. When you accommodate people that you have been opposing or competing with, you are not necessarily selling out or giving in, but you are actually charting a way forward.
Mdlalose retired from the Inkatha Freedom Party in 2005 to join the Democratic Alliance. During his death, he had retired from politics and was running his own foundation which focused on grooming young leaders. He is survived by his wife and children. Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Durban.
All right, let's talk more about Dr. Frank Mdlalose's legacy. We're now joined via Zoom by Senior Political Science Lecturer at the University of the Western Cape, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Mr. Mngomezulu, thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News, Prof.
Thank you very much, Ms. Flo, for having me, and thank you to your listeners.
You're most welcome. Prof, interestingly, Dr. Mdlalose speaks in that earlier clip that we played, or rather bemoaning the fact that he felt that his contribution wasn't particularly appreciated, talking about how some people, in fact, were calling him a sellout. Let's talk about his contribution then and why he should be recognized and appreciated, but also really what legacy he would then be leaving behind.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Flo. I think for me, as a point of departure, we should acknowledge the fact that the leader of Inkatha Freedom Party, Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, did a wonderful job together with his collective, of course, in the IFP. They did a wonderful job by giving South Africa a leader like the late Dr. Mdlalose. Not only was he educated, but he was also politically sound. And you could see the way in which he interacted with the former exiled ANC from the 1990s when they came back into the country, the negotiations that took place or before the 1994 elections. He played a critical role there. But unfortunately, some within within his own party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, they made a mistake of thinking that in fact what he was doing was giving the ANC more airtime than, of course, giving the IFP airtime. And as a matter of fact, there were people who pronounced that he was a sellout, meaning that he was selling the IFP to the ANC, which was totally incorrect. Yeah. I think that they misunderstood the way in which he operated, because he said you can have political adversaries, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your political adversaries are your true enemies. It only means that you are serving the country, but operating in different spaces. So I think they misunderstood him. So on that one, I would agree with him that he was misconstrued and therefore he was misrepresented. He did a wonderful job in terms of bringing together the ANC and the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal, and also contributing to dealing with the violence that had already started from as early as 1992-93.
Yeah, of course, we also will read about his involvement in the much spoken about CODESA negotiations, but really, as South Africans, or many South Africans rather, don't really know the intricacies of what really happened or went down during those CODESA negotiations. Of late, there are many people now who are asking, in fact, what was the benefit of those negotiations, particularly for the majority blacks in the country? So maybe you can give us an idea in terms of the role that was played by Dr. Mdlalose. You speak about the critical role that he played. No doubt we know the role that he played within KZN, but let's get more specific in terms of those CODESA negotiations then.
No, CODESA negotiations brought us to where we are as this floor. Because if it wasn't for the CODESA negotiations, this country would have been in ashes. I've heard people who misread politics, and they say that the ANC and the IFP sold the nation because they gave too much to the then National Party, which later became the New National Party. The reality of the matter is we could have gone the way we went, or would have taken a different route, in which case then the end result would have been disastrous. I agree that the discussions that took place in CODESA 1, CODESA 2, and the stalemate that we experienced somewhere in between, more especially because of the IFP in general, but also because of Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was saying that let us get things right. You cannot have a negotiated settlement which leaves out then KwaZulu and which leaves out the late King Goodwill Zwelithini. And Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi and Dr. Frank Mdlalose played a critical role in that regard, because they were looking beyond CODESA talks, and they were also looking beyond the 1994 elections. Most of the people were excited. All they wanted was the election, and thinking that after the election, everything would subside. The reality of the matter was, if you had the election in 1994, having not resolved the ANC-IFP issue, after the election, hell would basically be with us. So I think that given the shrewd leadership that Dr. Mdlalose showed during the CODESA talks, and in fact thinking not only about KwaZulu-Natal, but thinking about the country as well, I think he should be credited for that. My view is that he was frustrated because he became a lone singer, as it were. There were people who were criticizing him, saying that he's too soft in those negotiations, and which is why then people said that he was bowing to the ANC. And I think that is the main reason why in 2005 he ended up leaving the IFP, not because he wanted to, but he felt he had to, because he was not receiving the kind of support he needed. And also, some people were not reading from the same script as he was reading. So I think that his contribution has, in fact, not been reported in the manner it should. And he's right in saying that he was not given the kind of accolades that he deserved at the time, and hence his decision to leave the party and then join the DA at a later stage.
Yeah, and that's actually where I want to go. I mean, in his formative years, Mdlalose was with the ANC and very much part of the ANC Youth League before becoming one of the founding members of the IFP, and then later on joining the DA. One would say there's no consistency there. Let's talk about all these transitions, being able to move from one party to another the way that he did.
Politicians will always do that for one or the other reason. Some of the politicians would join a political party because they strongly believe in its founding principles. Unfortunately, political parties evolve over time. You will find that what you stand for today will change tomorrow. Now, if you don't want to move with the time and say, because your party has changed, you then believe that the party has moved away from where it used to be, and then would decide to go and join another party. You have seen a number of politicians who are members of the ANC today, they become members of the DA tomorrow, they are members of COPE the other day, and then 3 years later, they come back a full circle and they rejoin the ANC. So we can interpret what Dr. Mdlalose did in that context. At one point, he was a member of the ANC, that is correct, but then later on, he became a member of Inkatha KwaZulu, which later became Inkatha Freedom Party. And then when he realized that his wishes and his thoughts were not embraced by some of his people, not all, but some of his people, then he felt that he still wanted to serve the nation, but then he felt the space was not good for him to do that. Hence his decision then to join the DA. Yeah. You may interpret that as a dishonesty and say people join this party today and they join the other party tomorrow. But then if you look at the broader context, including the one I've just outlined right now, you can understand why he had to change political parties in the manner he did. Yeah. We know for a fact that there are people who are members of the ANC today. At one point, they were members of Inkatha Freedom Party. And in fact, when the ANC was banned in 1961, some members of the ANC who remained in the country and didn't go to exile, they joined the ANC. So that can be expected.
Yeah. All right. Let's then go to where you want to go. And zoom in on him joining then the DA. Which principles of the DA resonated with Dr. Mdlalose?
No, I think that when the DA was formed, there was a state of hysteria, if I can put it that way. There was a euphoria, so to speak. There were people who embraced the DA because of the way it projected itself. You recall, Cisflo, that the DA, in fact, was a conglomeration of a number of political parties, including some leftovers from the National Party, which became the New National Party. The conservative elements of the New National Party did not want to join the ANC as others did, the likes of Martinus van Schalkwyk. So those ones then remained there, and then they said they are forming the Democratic Party. And then other parties were embraced, and then eventually you had the Democratic Alliance, which you know it today as the DA. So when the DA was formed, some people who had joined other political parties previously felt that this was a new space for them to serve this nation. So the likes of Dr. Mdlalose interpreted it in that way because it was a new party, so to speak, even though there were remnants from the old party. The same could be said about the ANC because it also welcomed people who were once members of the National Party. So in the case of the DA, there were people who felt that there were white people in the DA, and there were also people who were coming from other majority black political parties, and they felt that this was a space for them to make peace with their former white enemies and then build this country together. So my thinking, I mean, I may be wrong, but my thinking is that Dr. Frank Mdlalose interpreted in that way. He said these are the people who have been our oppressors for quite a long time, and now they are embracing other racial groups to be part of this new party. And then I'm of the view that this party is going to lead this country to the stratosphere. Of course, things have gone wrong since then, but at the time, I think that he can be exonerated by saying that as much as the principles were not clear at the time, but the thinking was explicitly clear that they wanted to build a new South Africa, which was going to cut across color lines or racial lines and across the ethnic lines, and therefore the DA at the time was the home for every other person, regardless of the fact that you were white or black or Indian or colored. So it was in that context that he joined the DA. Of course, he may have been surprised or disappointed at the later stage.
All right, Prof, thanks very much for giving us your time then this afternoon. That's Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. He is a senior political science lecturer at the University of the Western Cape.